Welcome to Bad Translations. This story is from a Russian Creepypasta website. I believe that's their word for creepypasta. After the story, we will be translating some of the reviews and seeing what people thought. Windows. I found an interesting site, and I have a story for you. I think that before we start, we need to explain a little bit. I turned around a bit. Weapons, as well as various survival strategies, tactical gear, binoculars, check the status of the lamp, and so on. I have a lot of such good, and Pearl of the Collective is a Remington Nova rifle, 700th model. You can easily buy in Russia after 5 years of possession of wheat DNA. I have a couple of very good optical Norden, one stronger and the other weaker. Not that I'm stupid, but I love that I feel Spremen problems in our feverish times. So like I said, it's background, and the story itself was the following. I had the opportunity to move into one of the apartments in one of the districts of Voyeristic. I took it off, due to production necessity. I had no intention to stay there for a long time, so the contract was signed for a couple of months in total. The apartment was on the top floor of the house. The view from the windows would be beautiful, if not for one. On the contrary, about 200 floors was written, about 200 meters, and I could barely see anything from the window. My apartment was cheap. Even the TV wasn't there. Neither there, I did not want to spend the internet. Anyway, soon I will move. So honestly, it was not very fun. Happiness was, there was less work than I thought, so I read in the evening, and then, when I had days off, I took a rifle and played. This was the entertainment that I came up with for myself on the day of my third stay in this apartment. I set the sight, looked through it on the street, wondering about the distance to various objects. I accidentally looked in a few windows somehow. Then I dragged her to the table to the window. I put Remington with optics on it, and through the gap, began to study the inhabitants of the house opposite. I've spent almost every night since. Of course, you will condemn me, and I will agree with you. There's nothing good to see people through the cross-vision, and they do not have a gun. But damned! Once I tried, I could not stop. Opposite the house there was only a little pile of colorful characters, and if the peasant from the 6th floor watched the porno fast tired every night. Then a small karate kid from the 9th, who organized his daily ruthless training in the kitchen, and the young couple on the 7th became my favorite. This couple was very hot. In a few days, when I was watching them, They fucked me with all the means I knew, and obviously would not stop. Also, they did not seem to know how the lights were switched off in their bedroom. It was possible to look at them endlessly. I hoped I would learn a lot from them. There were other alcoholics, interesting only during drunken struggles, divorced children, fewer or more normal families. In general, many things, but this story is not about them. One day, for the time of the next peepers, I accidentally looked through the window on the 8th floor, which I did not see before. I could see an almost empty room, illuminated by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The door was firmly closed. In the corner lay a bed on which a man was sitting in a classical yoga pose. He caught my attention with his calmness and decided to look at him. The man sat back in the window and looked into the wall. He was very skinny, pale and tall. His whole bald head looked disproportionately large, with no shirt and pants on it. 5 minutes I looked at him, but he never moved. I slammed to the wall where he was looking. The wall, after I could see it, was empty. No pictures, no carpet, no wallpaper had been scratched on the spot. I looked around the room. There was nothing interesting. A few couple of chairs, a coffee table with a bunch of newspaper, an old chair, a small carpet, a newspaper, a floor on the bed. On the closed door, I've seen a few incomprehensible vertical lines and all that. I decide that the guy simply meditates and is not worth waiting for any jokes from him. After which, I switch to my favorite karate kid, which just warmed up before the second training. 2 hours later, when a minor fighter and a restless couple finish their performance, I look once again in the window of the yoga window for the order. He sat in the same position and looked at the wall. After 30 seconds, I took off my rifle and went to bed. I would probably forget about all this if after a few days I do not look out the yoga window. I did not see anything new, and for some reason I was angry. Honestly, I seriously believed that every tenant in the house opposite me every night was obliged to entertain me, and this guy just sat and looked into the wall. Although she may not have looked, but she slept, for example, or maybe not alive in that sense, a doll, and maybe the real Oak gave it, meditated, and went to astral. Generally, that was what I was interested in. I watched him for an hour. He did not move. Exactly. Doll. Moreover, so thin and tall, head huge, pale skin, hands, it seems almost to the knee. There are no such people, but what does this doll do in the room alone? Is this room a storage for props? Where are the other things, and why does not anyone enter the room? Is the apartment building empty? And who then lit the light? I looked after the neighboring windows. On the right, as far as I am imagining the schedule, there is obviously another apartment. There lives a family with 2 young children. And on the left, dark window. The light does not burn. I decided to turn away, but no karate, nor the lovers of science that night did not care. The next day, I came home from work, and I immediately kept my mind. Seats. Bastard. In the same position. Although, aside, he turned a little to the side. That means something is still happening. I watched the whole evening. I did not even go to the toilet. I looked at the scope, and he's the seat. Looks to the wall. Looks like he's hardly breathing, or it seems to me. When my eyes broke, I spit and went to bed. In the morning before I went to work, I looked again. No change. So I watched him for a week. Several minutes in the morning, a few hours in the evening. But as and when that happened, I did not see it. Once I got back from work and saw the sheets on the beds changed. Then I decided to organize bunnies around the clock. In the morning, I checked again, and by pressing the record on the camera, the first day was disappoint. The camera is truly all recorded, and Yogi is spent all 8 hours sitting on the bed, video honestly without excitement. I barely had the patience to repeat the whole procedure The second time, I was lucky. In the evening, watching the video, I watched the door of the yoga room opened at 14 and 17 minutes, and the woman entered the tray with her hands. First, I decided to feed it, but there approached the law and put the tray in front of him on the bed. For some time, he stood and looked at him. But after closer sight, I saw her lips not move. Then he began to rub his hand out of his arm, and then, for a few seconds, tensed in front of him. What she did was impossible to contemplate, but because she was distracted by the thin back of the yoga. But it seemed as though she had made a shot in her arm. At least, I got the impression. Then, she somehow veered sideways, went to the window, opened the window, and lit a cigarette. After she behind her, nothing else happened. Looking up from the monitor, I looked at her range. Everything in the room was exactly the same as it was the last frame of the shot. If there was no camera, I would have never known someone came in there. I checked the video once again. There was something strange in him. Even scary, although it seems everything is clear. Bled. A thin guy sits on a bed. Probably down, or something else. His sister comes, or something like that. She makes a right injection, smokes a cigarette, leaves. I reviewed the video again, and more, since I did not decide anything. Once again, I checked the scene to the protege, sitting, scouring, went to bed. Over the next week, using my surveillance system, I discovered that a woman with a tray enters the room every 2 days, about 14-15 hours, makes an injection, smokes a cigarette, and leaves. B. Nothing seems to be happening in the room. However, everything has become an obsession. So first, I've never seen this change in sheets. Secondly, it seems to me that this was as strange in the behavior of a woman. I watched her come to his room 3 times and never turned her back for a moment. I've been watching him for a couple of weeks. He almost hit the job. For that time, he changed the sheets again, but I was never a video. I do not know how this happened, though at night, when I was sleeping, I also learned that a couple of times a week, a woman from her apartment goes somewhere between 30 or 40 minutes. I saw her coming out of the porch and coming back with a couple of packages. I could have followed her several times. She went to the nearest store and went to the pharmacy on her return. I tried to find out what she had bought in the pharmacy, but she took a check with her, and I did not dare ask a pharmacist. Every 2 days, a woman would come to his room, give injections, and smoke a cigarette, go out. She never turned away from him. I studied his room well. I've been thinking a lot about the doors in the doors, about the rugged wallpaper. The doorbells were dying. She snatched it up like a wallpaper on the walls, nails on his hands. I had reason to think so, but I did not find any other explanations. He started scaring me. I looked through the room. I spent hours watching his head, and he just sat on his corner bed. It was particularly horrible to see in an adjoining apartment the little children playing and jumping on the couch and behind the wall. In fact, a few feet from them, this freak sits on the bed. I realized that I had to do something, but I could not think of anything. Call the police? What to say? I was exhausted. I broke the entire internet, but apart from standard horror stories, I did not find anything. Although it seems to me that one paste had an impact on this. I tried to find out something from the inhabitants of the house, but it seems that nobody knew anything about him. In the end, I decided to be the greatest idiotic act in my life. I was well prepared. I took a couple of my best knives, a traumatic revolver, a facial mask, keymasters, a flashlight, a fighter to draw attention, a smoke bomb. I put everything in my pockets as I tried not to look suspicious and not strut at each step, then went into the street, sat on the bench at the entrance, and waited. If the cops decided to come to me at this point, I would have problems over the roof. Sometimes I'm sorry that this has not happened. The biggest joke is that when I was sitting on the bench, I had no idea what I would do. About 40 minutes later, I saw that woman from that apartment left the house and went to her usual way to the store. I had exactly half an hour. I got up and entered the porch from which she left. Rose on the 8th floor. The hallway door was not locked, and I opened them. I found myself in the middle of a dimly lit hallway, one end of which was incredibly buried. Along the walls were metal backrests, bicycles, skis, sledges, some dusty boxes, piece of wood, furniture, strollers, a mailman. For some reason, she caught my attention. Estimating that the door of the apartment of interest to me was located precisely at the overcrowded end of the corridor, I, with a bored breath, moved there. Here it is, the door. I coached with brown oil canvas apartment number 42, doorknob, keyhole, spies, nothing special. I stopped, a few meters away from the door, trying to gather my breath. What am I doing here? Are you going to do it? Ooh. I had a big shudder. I just stood and looked stupidly from door to stroller and back. At one point, suddenly, I realized that I had heard something else, except for a heavy blow. I kept my breath and listened.
Shavark! Shavark!
The sound came from behind the door of 41 apartments and close to it.
Shavark!
Before I realized what it was, the sounds calmed down. There was a silent silence. The thoughts in my head moved slowly, and slowly I realized I heard his steps. He went to the door, and now stands behind him. Fuck him! Look at me through the spy! In this moment, the handle of the door swirled quickly, and the door seemed to be heavily restrained in the interior. Judging by the way it fell, I, as you put it here, blossomed the bricks. And that was the spirit that went from there. I do not remember coming down from the 8th floor. I can say one thing very quickly. Only I ran out of the door as quickly as I could fold. He was a crazy not to run into his house immediately, but by bypass the block to track the tracks. At home, I was in 10 minutes. I ran into my room, grabbed the rifle, pointing at his window. And I was really scared here. He stood at the end of the window, grabbed his hands on the glass, and damned if he did not stare directly into me. I only saw him for a second, but what I've seen, I will never forget. Thin, elongated bodies. Bones appeared through pale skin, long arms with distorted toes that rubbed the glass, on the bare, almost white head without a hair, a tiny, ugly, painless face, two large, dark eyes, and a mouth without lips. His hands shifted. His mouth opened and closed, leaving wet traces on the glass, and his eyes looked right. I just felt that look. Even though at that moment my brain was paralyzed with horror, but my body knew what to do, as in my sleep. I pulled out the window and rushed into the closet where I had a box of bullets. 10 seconds later, I came back with the already charged Remington. I did not care what happened later. Squealing screw, I pulled it and quickly took the window to the scene. At the crossroads, I only saw swings twisted. On the same day, I left the apartment. He paid the owner, did not ask questions. I was grateful to him. Since I was concentrating on the job I lived for a few months, everything started to be forgetful. Sometimes I'm scared. I realize why they were sitting face to face, so they put it, especially not to see other people. Who is he? I do not know. Is he dangerous?
Shavar.
I think that certainly.
Shavar.
Sometimes I see him in my dream. He is banging at my door, and I look at him through the spy, and my rifle in these dreams is not repeated. I do not like what he saw then. I am scared? I have guns, and I can fight for myself, but I lie if I say that I'm not scared. The end. Stephen King, take notes. This is how you write horror. I mean, my goodness, that was beautiful. Just the part where the keys shifted or whatever happened, wow, that really, and that really, like, resonates with the times, because I have keys, and I'm, whoa, and that
Shavar. Shavar.
part, whoa, hello nightmares. Anyway, yeah, I hope you guys are less scared than I am right now, because I'm not sleeping for the next forever. Ugh. I wonder if other people felt the same way when they read this. Let's take a look at these comments and reviews. Okay, let's see. Arnim left a comment saying, well, the story itself is good, not but terrible. I pour, going has to impress hard to be the reader by, though I even understand no people scary say why taste I impressionable people don't. Yes, interesting is it, but not terrible. Not the 5th month of the year I Russia in live. Who but their campaign are weirdos. Lots and why with author that rejected hypnosis. He was a good drug simply. The maybe psychologist wife did attack, and if so the 5th month of the year I say drugged, and friends told him that since hin were tasen and bad being families injected of this stuff and ask for money on the street. I'm go to the police where the author who never you have knowledge, how you imagine scared, quotation, I, V, have would had courage by approach apartment, yes, and I do also understand, not the author, how realized tree and yoga, who said she, has, impossibility basically. Ooh, okay then. I believe this person had a few cups of wine and then shot up heroin before writing this, they're all Russian, they're all Russian, so, they're all translated poorly, but whatever the hell this was, I doubt it made sense even when it was in Russian. Here we have a review from Diggram. That's what their username is. Let's see what they had to say. And you know what I presented at the beginning of the story. Imagine that in this house, there would also have been someone who looks out the window. Let's say through the telescope. Not all have the same rifle, and he means he is the author of this when he looks at a couple, sits sniper and fingering. This next one is from a user whose name was not translated, so. He lives a vegetable with a diagnosis of imbecility, which the mother from the world pulls over and over again, and fully advisedly weapon voyeurism decided to cocknut the sniper, right? Apparently in Moscow are all such or something psychotropic sprayed in the air. And it looks like Leroy replies with, if. Alright, looks like there's a comment from Vamp, spelt with a 3. I enjoyed it. When I read shark, the sound was coming from behind the door, 42 apartments, and clearly approaching, and realized what was going on. I thought, your mother, run, boy. Yeah, that comment just goes right over my head, because I still don't know what this shit was happening. Yeah, I'm still lost. That explained nothing. Ooh, looks like I have a nice little comment and reply chain here. Nafco, 5 years ago, says, people, maybe it's Jeff Bin? I'd shit so many bricks if it was him. Tear Princess replies with, now it sounds even stupider than 2 years ago. Nicolay replies, Jeff who? That old man is scary, not Jeff. Why man replied 4 years ago. You fools, Jeff boy. Alright, that does it for this episode of Bad Translations. This one is a little bit different from the last one. I didn't do as much reacting. Well, no, I didn't do any reacting. I wanted to test out doing it just with my narrator voice, the same way I do my narrations. Let me know which style you guys like more. The ones where, I stop and you can hear me reacting to the story, or saying my thoughts about the story. Or if you like where I just go through it as a normal story. And act as the character, even though it makes little sense. But cool. See you guys.
Shavark. Shavark.